And we are live on Oz Property Investors. We bring the big name. Sorry, Joe, I stitched you up there. I started talking about something, but how you going anyway, John? What's happening?
All good. I think the big news, as far as the property market goes, is the way that rents are rising dramatically, and I think it's only the start of what we're going to see. Rents are going to escalate over the next few years.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the cliffhanger you left for us just before we started the show. I was like, oh, that's crazy. I can't think of what a crazier rental crisis would look like, but you can't. The data doesn't lie. The data doesn't lie.
No, and you've only got to go to say realestate.com.au, look up the number of advertised rental vacancies in Australia compared to the number of people that are pouring into Australia, and you can see the numbers just don't add up. There's not enough rental vacancies available.
Wow, absolutely. Just starting straight from the packing a punch from the first minute. Like, how do people enjoy that? We've cut a lot of the. I mean, we still have some of the fluff, unfortunately. But Joe, how are you going anyway? What's happening, man?
Hey, I'm fluff free. I'm done. No more fluff, mate. Let's jump straight into the. Well,
I can't grow a beard. So.
We've got this new segment, John, where we talk about an article that we've consumed recently that we've enjoyed. Have you got an article that that you've consumed recently that you got a lot of value out of?
Oh, well, I've certainly read a lot that I haven't. The other way around. But I enjoy reading most things about the property market. And I get a lot of ammunition from what I read. A lot of the stuff you read is so ridiculous. So I think, but the main story has really been about some experts saying rent rises are going to moderate, and others are saying they're going to go up more. I think it's the hidden elephant in the room, really, because that's going to affect investors' fortunes dramatically.
And do you think what's driving that? I mean, it probably seems obvious, so apologies if I'm asking the really sort of simple questions. But do you think it's more about not more, but it is about largely vacancy rates being so low, more people coming into the country? Is that sort of what's driving it roughly, and not enough stock?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of. Over the years of the pandemic, we didn't build enough properties. The rate of housing development fell away. It still hasn't caught up because the costs of development are, so great, and they're increasing. And at the same time, we've had this massive influx, 600,000 people coming into Australia in the last year, and another 500,000 this year. All of those people need to be housed somehow, and there's just not enough accommodation.
Is there a way to find out where those people are going? Like, in terms of distribution of oh, great, all these people are coming. Where are they going? Like, how do we find that data out?
Well, it's you could. In fact, a lot of it has to do with the type of immigrants they are. If they're students, we know that they're going to live close to education centres like universities and so on. So the rent demand in those areas near our major universities is going up dramatically. I looked at all the available rentals in areas near universities, like in Sydney around Stanmore, or in Ultimo and Randwick, those sorts of places. There's no vacancies at all, and that's only one segment. But you've also got a lot of people coming in as permanent arrivals, and they tend to want to live in areas that are sort of ethnically friendly. They feel more at home. So people, say, from Sunni Muslim countries will want to live in areas where there's already a lot of Sunni Muslim, where there's a mosque and Sunni Muslim schools. So we know where people come from, where they're likely to initially settle in Australia. Yeah.
Yeah, super interesting. What about you, Jeff? What's your article of the week, mate? What have you been consuming?
So I was I like looking at good old CoreLogic, and I will branch out eventually. Maybe I'll even talk about a sporting article. Maybe not. That'll send people to sleep. But this week I looked at a headline that read "Cost Growth Stabilising Within Residential Building Sector," because I try and marry it up as much as I can with what we're talking about. And we're sort of talking about predicting the property market tonight, and I'll go into a spiel. But what it actually said is there's an index called the Cordell Construction Index, which is about building new dwellings. So basically, that sort of is slowing to almost starting to sort of say it's not rising at all. But it rose 0.5% for the quarter, for the September quarter, which is the smallest lift since pre-COVID. So since June 2019 quarter. So basically means that that's now sitting at 4% per year or as an annual growth. So basically, Eliza Owen is saying that this is a fourth consecutive slowdown in that growth of construction costs. So, and she went on to say that the reason that's driving, or she believes the reason that's driving that is because there's approvals are sort of starting to, the cost of materials and that sort of thing. I did read more into it, but she said that there wasn't as many approvals coming through, which didn't. So the cost of the demand the demand necessarily isn't there as well either, necessarily.
But the demand for building and building materials is not there.
Well, apparently that's according to the index. So I'll drop the link to the article, Joe. You can read it later. But basically
pop it in there.
Cost, what are you reading, Joe? Tell us about.
Mate,
John's going to be more excited.
Yeah, this is an exciting one. I had a chat with John 2 weeks ago. We had a bit of a pre-chat as we do for these sessions, and John's like, "Oh, you check out my." Well, you didn't say check out my books, but we're talking a lot about data, and you're like, "Actually, that's in that book." Oh, this is in my book. So I had a boots on the ground adventure in another location. So I had all this time flying and not so much driving and reading, but I've pretty much consumed all of this one. You can see all the dog-eared little tags, which is done by John, Mastering the Australian Housing Market. I really wish I read this when I got started in property investing, because it's the foundational data talking about supply and demand, but you break it down so simply. Like, I've got my notes here, like when the market is decreasing and prices are increasing, when time on market is decreasing and prices are increasing, so you get that difference, a boom is underway. When a boom is about to end, the time on market is increasing and prices are increasing. When the market is about to bust, the time on market increases. Anyway, you break it down super simply. So I've been thoroughly enjoying that. And thank you, John. Thanks for I still paid for it though. I didn't.
It's a pleasure. That's another $2. That's all right. There's another $2 in my pocket from the royalties. We're still getting a lot of royalties from that book. I wrote that in 2010. The second book was in 2016. Which is called Unlocking the Property Market. But the first one has really been more popular, and there's still a lot of people buying it. But you don't have to buy it. You can go to your local library, and you'll probably find that there's a copy there.
It'll work just as good.
I love that insight there. You just sort of the wealth of the local library. Like it is still around and well and truly kicking. Like, I think the library, I expected them to be sort of obsolete by this stage, but no, that they are sort of, no, I mean, they're getting a resurgence. But tonight we are here to, I mean, I first saw John, I believe, present live in 2016. Might even actually been 2014, 2015 at the Parramatta Leagues Hotel. It was with not Results Mentoring. It was one of the property meetup, I think it was. And I was on the edge of my seat. I still have notes from looking, and I think I saw you several further times. And I just think you have an absolute wealth of knowledge. And but tonight we are going to unpack your search for the Holy Grail. So we're going to talk about how the market works and how investors look at the greatest benefits of that. So the kind of macro factors, and then we're going to look at how to look at predicting the future. So going a little bit more, it is still macro. And then how to do it yourself, I suppose, looking at the boom indicators. And then I think we might even, if we can, we might even go a little bit more suburb specific, or at least area, kind of maybe even like a capital city. Because I think that'd be fantastic. So I'm excited for unpacking all that. And you've produced a wealth of slides. So it's going to be amazing, Joe. So did I miss anything, Joe?
I don't think you've missed. Much. But the big thing for me is, John is saying we're going to be in a very interesting, well, I'll let you say it yourself, John. We're a very interesting time in property where there's going to be some very high price growths, rental growth. But I want to unpack the fundamentals behind that and learn the art of predicting where the next hot spots and where the next not spots are. Before we do that, we just got to jump into our sponsored post of the week, and then we'll dive right in.
There's nothing worse than going into a situation unprepared, especially when that situation is purchasing one of the most expensive assets of your life against a trained property expert in the form of a real estate agent. It's a scary thought, but it is a skill that can be taught. Do you want to learn how to become fully prepared when buying a property so you can get out there, buy your dream home or investment property without the fear of actually messing it up? Scott Agate, the founder and expert property negotiator at Hello House, has been helping people buy their properties by stepping in and negotiating with the agents and saving his clients tens of thousands, and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. Scott has now decided to share all that he's learned over the past 28 years in real estate so you can go out there and do the exact same thing on how to find a property, analyze that property, negotiate on that property, and transact on it to get the best results. He's created the Get Buyer Ready course, which is a step-by-step guide on how you too can become an expert property negotiator. It's the easy way of how you can avoid all of these agent games and get the best purchase price on that dream home or your investment property. The course is in short bites for busy people with no fluff at all. Just all the information you need to get buyer ready and secure that next property with confidence at the best price. Scott has been kind enough to give our community a massive discount with the link below. Sign up today before you even think about putting an offer on that next property, and it will be one of the best decisions you ever make.
And we are back. So that was yeah. I mean, and so people, if you have comments or questions, please drop those in, and we'll aim to, because we can answer. We'll ad lib some of these questions. But John, I was looking when I was looking for a bio of yourself. You are very modest about. I was looking for like a lot of people have some, but what I came up with yourself, and it's very short and succinct, and I do like it because I can tend to ramble. So I am doing at the moment. So you have well over a decade of experience researching the nature and dynamics of different types of assets, and you are a leading property market researcher, author, and commentator. And I think as well about yourself, I think you've been investing for over 40 years, I believe, if memory serves me. So I'm amazed at your wealth of experience and just your knowledge and just your ability to simplify a large set of information.
It's it's been a sort of a quest, really. I started off when I was about 21, bought my first house in Melbourne, and it doubled in price in about 4 years. And I thought, wow, that's just incredible. Wow. That's the way to go. I thought it was that easy that you just bought a house and it went up in price. And so we sold one, bought another one. And that one, we did some renos to it and actually didn't make any money at all when we had to sell after 4 years.
Oh, wow.
I was moving back to Sydney. Yeah, it was just a real shock. And so I thought, I've really got to work out how the market works. So, I went through this journey of discovery and buying and selling more properties, but learning as I went. But the main thing was to work out, is there, a system of knowing how the market works and how investors can actually benefit. So, that was something, and I found most of that out. Actually, the lightning, or light bulb moment was when I was at Residex. I was the head of research there during the GFC and the global financial crisis. And the banks came to us and said, John, we're really worried because prices have fallen by 40% in America. And we think that could happen here, something similar. How do we know? And so I started analysing all of the different indicators. And I think I've got a slide there. If you want to bring that up on the screen, is that possible?
Absolutely.
This is the one that shows all the indicators. That's a bit about me. Well, we won't go through that. I think you know well enough. I've been around a long time. But there's the 20 years, all different possible causes of housing price changes. I went through the whole lot, every single thing I could find about what experts were saying would cause housing prices to change over time. And then I thought, this is far too complex. Notice when I do this at presentations, people writing all these down, and of course, there's no way you're going to be able to measure all this stuff. So what I've done, because, it's the first time I've been on the Australian Property Investors Show, I thought I'd simplify all this down into a simple schematic, so you'll understand in a few minutes what it took me 20 years to find. So would you like to show that?
What does it look like?
Oh, okay.
There it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
this is easy.
It is, and look, I want you to study it because I'll be asking questions later on.
Oh no.
No, seriously, what I did, of course, during that GFC period is I looked at all those indicators and I discovered how the market worked and how it was about supply and demand and how you had to be able to measure those. And if you could accurately measure the supply and demand and the trends and what they were, then you could predict what was likely to happen. So that was the actual moment where I thought, yeah, I can figure out how this market works and you can get the most benefit.
Can I take on a bit of a tangent? I want to know, because one thing that's spiked my interest is that term lockdown, which kind of evokes memories for me of Victoria. Not that I'm Victorian, but most lockdown city in the world. But what are your thoughts on government policy and those sort of, like Queensland sort of had that land tax sort of situation, and Victoria's recently? Have you sort of looked into what the impact of that and investor sentiment has on the property market? Like, what is that?
It's really the only reason you're a property investor is because you want to make money out of it. And I think that governments, of course, are in power because they want to get as much money as they can to support their programs. But it seems to me that governments take the path of least resistance, and landlord bashing is one way of doing that. So in Victoria, Queensland, they start to limit the times you can increase rents to once a year, and that sort of thing, and also taxes on landlords in the way of short-term rental stays and unoccupied rental properties. So there's all ways they're trying to make money, but ultimately it's about profit, and that's why my mantra is timing is everything, because if you can buy in an area where prices go up 30-40% in 1 year, or if they double in 2 years, then paying tax doesn't really matter because you're going to be so far ahead. It's a drop in the bucket. So while I think that governments do have this sort of unfortunate way of interfering at the wrong end, like one of the things I'll do is reduce stamp duty, so first home buyers, things like that, and all that does, we've measured it, as soon as they cut the stamp duty, price of homes goes up by that amount, because they're not changing the supply, they're just increasing the demand.
Yeah, so that it goes up by $20,000 or whatever that discount is.
Exactly, that's what happens. Yeah.
And the other interesting thing, I think, that they're disincentivizing. Anyway, we'll get off this. I won't get a soapbox, but
it's interesting. We got a comment here that says government is the greatest hindrance to property investment. What are your thoughts of that?
I don't know about greatest. I mean, I think you, the person who's commenting, the individual is the greatest hindrance, I believe, because the government is just a thing, right? I mean, if it's a way that people perceive it. I mean, I'll get a bit metaphysical there, but no, like if you think that that's a hindrance, then it is. I mean, it's just a thing. It's like getting a loan. Like, is the bank the biggest hindrance because they won't lend me money? But no, the others. So they tend to they've incentivized these kind of build to rent kind of things, giving tax sort of incentives to those, but yet somewhat punishing the sort of smaller mum and dad investors with the land tax. So just interesting the way that they're sort of doing that. But anyway, back to on course. This big schematic. Let's look at it again, and we'll. Okay. How can we actually? You go, Joe.
Yeah, we've seen that. What's this one? What are we looking at? We're looking at this book. This is the one I just highlighted here.
Yeah, well, that was. So what happened there was when I'd figured out how the market works and how investors could benefit, I thought everyone needs to know this. So I wrote that book called Mastering the Australian Housing Market, and you can see there the reviews that it got. The problem with doing that, and I was the first one who actually identified the fact that you can measure supply and demand, and that you could work out what was likely to happen by employing those stats, and I'll show you how to do that yourself later. But the problem was I then had a whole bunch of imitators, people who read the book and said, oh, we can do that. And so all these sort of competing outfits sprung up offering to do the same thing. So the next slide, I think you'll see my patent, which I was awarded in 2016. This is the only patented housing market prediction solution in Australia. So technically, I'm the only person who's allowed to do this because that's my patent. But I know there's about 6 or 7 companies who do the same thing, and that's fine. You know, I think that it's to know it works and that it helps people. I think that is a system that, and that's a sort of a result that's worthwhile in itself.
Absolutely. So one thing I wanted to talk about before we jump into data and charts is, one, your thoughts of, I mean, you kind of alluded to it before, timing the market is the most important. It's not about time in the market, which is what everyone says, right? I hear this all the time. It's all about time in the market, not time in the market. What do you, how do you think about that? How do you put that?
Well, I think that timing, the other one, time in the market is a huge cop. People say, look, prices will always go up over time. It's a buy and hold type set. You get the power of compounding growth, all of these rubbish statements. And I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone by saying that.
No. How about those people that bought in? Did you see that? You're probably familiar with the people who bought in Moranbah and were the API property investor of the year in 2012. And I don't mean to sort of sandbag on somebody, but yeah, that didn't end particularly well for that investor, unfortunately.
No, there was a lovely couple. I met them a few years after they were crowned Property Investors of the Year, and at that time, and they had about $26 million worth of property, which had dropped % in value. And she said, you know, we're stuck because the banks won't actually declare us bankrupt. They wanted their money, and so they just had. And you know, she worked as a real estate agent in Moranbah trying to sell her own properties to get some money back. But yeah, a really sad tale. But you know, there are lots of stories like that about. You can look at Perth from 2000 and 2013 to 2021. No price growth at all. You know, nearly 10 years. Hobart did the same for about 8 years up to 2016. No price growth. And there's been lots of examples like that around Australia where time in the market hasn't worked. And I think it's because a lot of these experts don't really know what's around the corner, and therefore they say, don't worry, you know, prices will go up over time. Even if prices are falling now, they'll go up later. So that's what they say. Out. It is really because if they did know, and the funny thing is, of course, as soon as price growth starts, they say, oh, now it's the start of a new cycle, it's time to buy. And I'm saying, but hang on, a year ago you were saying it's not about timing at all. Now suddenly it is because it's the right time, you know, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
So how do you explain that though? Like, how do you explain Perth 14-year stagnation?
10,
because
9 years ago, not 14 years.
Sorry.
14 years.
Poor
Perth,
it was. It's long. It's been a long time. Yeah. So
they're laughing now.
They are laughing. The last 2 years, you're very much laughing. But how do you kind of explain? How does that work? How does a place stay so long in such a trough?
Well, that's very easy to explain. And again, it's all about supply and demand. So what happened, Perth went through a mining boom up in 2006 up to about 2012. And all the construction workers that were building houses and units and so on in Perth went up to the mining towns, Karratha and Port Hedland and those places, working in the mining, industry, because there was huge money to be made. And I remember going there and you'd see them coming back. They were on 4 weeks on. It was called the will maker or the divorce maker shift, because you'd be 4 weeks on with 1 day off in the middle, and then earn masses of money and come back to Perth for 1 week, in which you'd spend all that money. And you'd see these guys coming off the plane, they're still in the high vis vests and the sort of gum boots on with that on them. An hour later, they'd be walking through Perth in a 3-piece Armani suit, with a girlfriend on each arm, you know, and spending all that money as quickly as they could. But it was that boom that meant that there was no housing construction at all in Perth. When we went there, you'd see half completed blocks of units. So the workers had simply down tools and gone off to the mining areas. Now, when the ended in 2013, they all came back. And of course, they couldn't do anything else but build houses and units. And so whole new areas around Mandurah and all these, you know, sort of new suburban areas of Perth were massively overdeveloped. So there were, you know, huge numbers of houses being built because all these guys, that was all they were doing. And that meant that there was suddenly a massive oversupply of properties compared to the demand. And that's what caused it. So prices went backwards and then they stabilised and they didn't move until the point at which where the demand for properties caught up to the supply. And that took about, you know, 8 years for that to happen. And that's what we call it like a tipping point, because at that, when that moment occurred, suddenly the demand was greater. More people wanted to buy homes than what were available on the market, and prices started to go up. And what we've seen in the last 2 years is the result of that, what can happen. So it's not a regular performer, the property market, and it's because of that imbalance of supply and demand that causes it.
So one of the questions I highlighted it somewhere in the book. You talk about growth, kind of raising. I haven't got it in front of you, but growth. Well, the market will do pretty much the same. How do you explain it? How do the growth of property in all areas will eventually kind of continue on?
I'm not sure what you mean.
That was a terrible question. I need to find it.
Well, no, I think if we look at the next slide, that might explain.
How does the property market actually work? Yeah, what is the holy grail? That's what I want to understand, because
okay, so what I did when I was working out how the market worked, I went right back to 1901 and looked at what the median house price was in Australia, which was the equivalent of about $1,400, and then where it is now. So that you can see there, that purple line, that's the actual Australian capital city house price movement over time. And the red line is how it trends. So yeah, over time, prices have always gone up. And that's
crazy. 1946 to 1966. So we're saying it essentially was large in today's dollars, largely flat for 20 years.
Oh yeah, that was during the Great Depression years. You can see it went backwards. Prices fell by around 20%.
After the Great War.
Yeah, and again, there you can see in that period in the 60s, what happened there was that this big jump that you can see after the Second World War was when all the veterans came back from fighting, and we had huge numbers of refugees coming in, but mainly, you know, it was the returned soldiers who wanted to start families. They'd been putting it off for 4 or 5 years while they were, you know, fighting. And so we had this massive boom in the number of babies, and that was called the baby boom, so of which I'm one. And that's why that massive growth occurred. And property prices doubled in 2 years. But then we had a huge number of overseas arrivals, refugees coming in from war-torn, you know, countries in Europe, and they were all renters. So what you see there is that the prices didn't go up at all. But if you would look at the rent movement, you would see a massive increase in rents during that time when prices didn't go up at all, because all the new arrivals were all renters, but rents went up massively. But that trend line, it's about 7% per annum. That's the average growth rate. But when you look, and the next slide shows you this, is that we've had bursts of really, really strong price growth. So periods of time, you know, where prices in that after the First World War, they trebled and they doubled and so on. But we've also had periods, that we look at the next slide, where prices have been very low or they've actually gone backwards. So my aim is to figure out, well, why did this happen? And I think you know already the answer to that is it's all about population growth. So when we get a lot of people coming into Australia, that's when the property market booms. And when there's no people coming into Australia, it tends to stagnate or can even go backwards. So would you like me to? Yeah, I was going to say, just go on to the next bit about what I think is going to happen.
Well, one of my questions was the transfer of wealth that's going to occur, right? You say that the like you mentioned, the baby boomers have been. There was a massive uptick of baby boomers, and now that's going to shift, right? As baby boomers start to transition to that next phase of life, millennials start to inherit that money. What do you think is going to happen to the property market? What's that going to?
Somebody in between baby boomers and millennials, though, isn't there, Joe? Isn't there Gen Ys or something?
Well, yeah, but
the whole generation.
Is it millennials are now the biggest?
I'm not
cohort,
a millennial,
aren't they?
Gen Y.
Millennials are the biggest cohort, aren't they now?
They probably are. But I think what you find happens over time is that, like all the baby boomers, they're getting old. They're starting to move out to regional markets or downsizing if they want to live in the same city. Then they're just going to move to a smaller property. So that means that all these big old, houses in well-established areas are now being taken up by upgraders. So the next generation, which is mainly Gen X, they're moving into those sorts of areas in large numbers. And then, of course, the newer outer suburban areas is where the new lot of first home buyers will be able to move in. So I think it's just a gradual transference of demand from one type of market to the other. But the wealth
doesn't shift too much.
No, it doesn't shift out of the property market.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's jump into the 3 linked booms.
Yeah,
okay.
So this is what I discovered, guys, is that when you have a population boom, you always get an economic boom as well, and then you get a property market boom following that. So let's have a look at the next slide, which is the way I worked out what is a property market boom, right? Now, this is the same data I showed you before for the prices going from 1901 all the way to the present, but this is the percentage change that's occurred in Australian capital city house prices each year. So, it's just up and down.
It looks so volatile. Looks so volatile.
Yeah, I know it moves a lot. But if we make 15% growth in 1 year, which is the next slide, we make that the sort of the dividing line. So if there's growth over 15%, that's a boom. But if it's not over 15%, it isn't. And then the next slide, you'll see that there's only ever been 5 times when that's happened. We've only ever had 5 real property market booms in our history.
This is just before COVID happened.
It doesn't include, and I think the COVID boom is actually part of the next boom. I think that's all. So let's have a look then at the next one, which is the economic. Oh, sorry, that's this one. So here you've got the population growth from annual arrivals from migrants, and you can see there the booms are the property market booms and how closely related they are to when we've had periods of high numbers of overseas arrivals. There's a really strong correlation. And then, of course,
1911, 1921, 1946, and 1976.
Yeah. And then the next thing we get is
21, 46, 70, 75, 2001. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Very well linked.
Yeah, they are. So now we move along to the next graph, and that is economic boom. So what this is tracking is actual economic performance, GDP, using RBA chart pack and published data. And then I've overlaid when those property market booms occurred. And you can see there again, we've had economic booms where the property market's booming as well. And the third one then is when property market booms. So when we look at the population growth, this is the annual change in house prices. What we can see is that we're heading for another boom. So, when I look at those 3 linked booms, I can see that we're well and truly on the way to another boom. In fact, at the moment, property prices are at their peak in Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth. They've never been higher. That means that things are really starting to move.
Yeah, but I mean, they've never been high. Can they continue to grow? Like, is there a point where growth just Like, I mean, what did we have last year and the year before? 20% growth rates. How can something go from $300,000 to $700,000 in 3 years?
Well, it can, and the reason it can, when I was back at Residex in 2000, I think it was 2008, and I was approached by the news because the Sydney median house price had hit $500,000, and the general consensus was, well, that's it, it can't possibly go any higher. $500,000, ridiculous amount of money for a house, and now it's double that, so it can continue. And the reason it does and can is because the main constraint on house price growth is interest rates, having to repay loans, and the only people who have to do that are people who start out as first-time buyers. Once you start upgrading, the amount of debt you have decreases until finally, most 30% of property owners don't have any debt at all. So the prices can just keep going up. There's no limit.
So what are your thoughts on this mortgage cliff? Like, I think that kind of ties in nicely with that. Everyone's talking about this mortgage cliff where the market's going to crash because we're all coming off 2% fixed rates, which I think I've been off fixed rates for 6 months now.
I've been on a fixed rate for 2 years. So I mean, I'm not crashing, but yeah.
But it ties into that. Yeah.
I think it's it's not a mortgage cliff. I think it's more mortgage pain. And a lot of people I know, my daughter included, have put away extra money when they could, when the rates were really low, and now using that, they're cutting their standard of living if they have to. But when you buy a house, it's the most important possession you probably will ever own, and so you do everything you can to keep it. When we went through a period of time where interest rates were at 13%, and I was growing vegetables out the back and having cooks and things just to keep on being able to pay the mortgage, because the house was the most important thing. Apart from
veggie garden's fun anyway. We definitely want to get a veggie garden going. But
so I think more people will be doing that, getting chooks.
So we should really be investing in chicken farms, is what I've gathered.
Exactly.
So how do we spot these things? So how do we kind of, like, we've got a slide here, what's caused the COVID boom and bust? So I'm kind of interested what has caused this, and I don't know if this chart is telling me. I can't tell. I don't know what this chart is telling me right now. But I'm sure you can.
Well, yeah, all will be revealed. This shows you. The blue line is the median house price. So it shows you what it was like before the pandemic and then what happened during the pandemic and after. So you can see how the median house price rose dramatically. But the orange one is the interest rates that people were paying. So you can see at the start of the pandemic, interest rates dropped, but it took about a year before house prices started to go up, even though interest rates were so low. And the reason for that was, again, supply and demand. There was huge numbers of properties available on the market, excuse me, and it took a while for that surplus to get used up. But once it did, then prices started to escalate. People went to the banks had heaps of money, and so they were able to offer people loans, and so prices started to go up and up and up. Then the RBA increased interest rates and prices started to come back down. Now, the next slide, what that shows you is the actual trend. This is what the overall trend was for interest rates. And when you look at that, you can see that they've only really gone up slightly from before the pandemic to now. The next slide is the median house price trend, and it's exactly the same. So where we are now, we would have been if the pandemic had never occurred. Interest rates are back where they would have been. House prices are back where they would have been.
Right.
So it indicates
it should have just been a long flat line like this. But since we had some crazy, money printing going on and excitement, it's gone up. And same with the interest rates.
I think
because even just before COVID.
Oh, sorry. This is an interesting question from Brennan. I think it's covering my face, but I'll read it out. So he asks, is the price boom correlation roughly 1 to 2 years behind the population boom? What are your thoughts on that? So do people, what comes first?
Okay, the population boom, if it's mainly due to overseas arrivals, which it is at the moment, these people will be renters, and it typically takes about 4 to 5 years for renters to be sufficiently enough established, especially if they're from overseas, to buy their first home. So it takes about 4 years for that increased population in rent demand to transfer into price growth. So in terms of that question, it's longer than 1 to 2 years. It's probably about 4 to 5 years. And we've had,
because it's hard to sort of get yourself established and figure out exactly if you want to buy in that area. I mean, you might have your community, your cultural community in that area, but you don't know what you don't know. You sort of think, okay, yeah, that's where a lot of people from my cultural background are living. But maybe I want to just check it out before I go and commit myself to 800,000 or 1.2 million or whatever it is.
Yeah, and you've got to be in a position where the banks will give you that loan. And it takes, you've got to be established well enough in Australia for that to happen. So what we have at the moment is this sort of 4 to 5 year delay before those new arrivals will become first home buyers. So what I see happening is in about 4 or 5 years, we're going to see a massive growth at the lower end of the market.
I tell you what, we have to get our hands on, Joe. Where people are moving, where people coming to Australia are moving right now. And then
we need, when you go to the airport and you have to fill in that form, for some reason, everything in this world is digital except for that one little fill-in form at the airport. We need to get a stack of those.
They still don't have digital.
They don't. It's ridiculous every single time. And it's like, oh, do you have a pen? No, of course I don't. I'm on a plane. Why would I have a pen? So one of the things that that I'm interested in about, like, we're spotting a boom right now. How do we spot when do we, because this is very high level macro, right? We're talking about Australia's boom and bust, because I've been buying in locations recently where a year ago, like we pull up this boom and bust chart. I bought in like whatever a year ago was in November, and we paid 508,000. It's now worth 650,000. So how do we know when to get out of an area? Like, when do we know when to leave?
Something like what happened in Tassie. Like, Tassie just kept going until it stops. Like, what was it? Supply and demand? Was that?
Yeah, that's really what it is. But perhaps if I explain to you more about when to get into a market, and then you
know when to get out.
Yeah, the reverse process will tell you when to get out.
Let me guess. There's a slide for it, and there is.
There is.
How to time the market. Should have read these before.
It's like Joe timed it.
It's all about timing. The first thing is that prices are lagging indicators. When a property gets sold, it's been on the market for quite a while. Then there's a settlement period. Then it's time for the data to go to the government, the Lands Department or whatever, and then it gets published. And so it can take 3 to 4 months before those prices get published. So what they're doing is they're lagging behind. If you wait until you're looking, say, to buy in a market, and you wait until price growth occurs, like you might say in Perth right now, really good growth occurring, the problem is that you don't really know that that's going to continue. So don't look at prices. I always say that's the first thing you ignore is price performance. And even more to the point with that is you get some experts saying, oh, only buy in property areas where there's been no price growth for a long time because they're overdue for growth, like, Perth might have been. But you don't really know that. And other experts say the opposite. They say only buy in areas that have got really strong performance, because that way you're assured it'll continue. My view of that is just don't look at past performance as far as prices are concerned. What you do is you look at the actual things that cause prices to change. So prices are the effect of something. What's the cause? Well, it's simply this supply, that is the number of properties available for sale, which is what we call the number of listings, and then demand, which is the number of sales. And the other thing is the speed, which is the time it's taken to sell properties. And the wonderful thing about all this is that this data, which, when I started analysing the market, it was really hard to get a lot of this stuff. But now you can just go to one source and get it all, and you can get it all for free. So would you like me to show you how to do that?
How do we do it?
There it is. Okay.
Victor Harbour. Interesting place.
Oh, you don't worry about the area. That's just an example. So to search for listings, you go to the suburb, so Victor Harbour, and then you make sure you exclude surrounding areas. So you're just looking at that area, pick houses or units, and then it'll tell you how many there are. And if you track that every month, have a look, it'll give you the trend. In other words, the number of listings going up or the number of listings going down. Now you need the other two bits of information, which is the annual sales and time on market. How on earth do you get that? Well, if you look on the right there, you'll see a girl with a pair of red binoculars, and it's very cleverly hidden, but this is actually PropTrack data. And PropTrack was purchased by realestate.com.au, and they've made all that data, and PropTrack is one of the two main data providers. So you've got CoreLogic and PropTrack. So PropTrack's data is all there free. I'm not sure if realestate.com is doing that on purpose. Yeah, so maybe, you know, the data's made available free of charge because realestate.com.au don't want CoreLogic to you know, succeed in opposition to PropTrack. I don't know, but nevertheless, how many were sold in the last 12 months? Still
valuable.
There it is, yeah. So there's the number of sold in the last 12 months, and I think we've got a red, there it is. So that's how easy it is. Now, if we know that there were 40 something listings and 100 and something, you know, 69 odd sold, we can work out the ratio, and the bigger the ratio of sales to listings, then
we got
stronger
66,
that market is.
And then what? We do 66
to 1. So it's about 3 to 1.
Right.
And that 3 to 1, that means that's a strong market. So that's telling you that it's probably prices are going up. But if you want to know if they're going to continue to go up, you just watch that ratio. And if it increases, then so 4 to 1, 5 to 1, you're on a winner, because that market is going to increase in value dramatically. The other thing you look for, yeah.
How long though should we? Because obviously you're not obviously, but you're only looking right now at a point of time. Like how long for it sort of ticks one way or the other? Should you start?
The ratio tells you that. So if it's at 3 to 1 and it goes to 4 to 1, and there hasn't been any price growth, then it's pretty sure that it's going to start kicking in pretty quickly. And the other way you can check is the next one, which is the time on market, 42 days. Anything between 30 to 60 days is pretty much what we expect, and that's you know, a sign of a good solid market. If it's over 60 days, it means properties are taking too long to sell, and it means that prices will probably stagnate. If it's over 120 days, I wouldn't go there, you know, with a barge pole, because it's just simply a market where prices are going to fall. If it's under 15 days, that's a really hot market. And when you look at Perth at the moment, probably about a third of Perth's suburbs have got time on market less than 15 days. That's a really, really hot market. And the problem with that is, yes, growth will continue, because it'll continue until that ratio changes and the time on market increases. But you can't get in because the market, you know, there's no bargaining power. You simply, the vendors say, well, look, if you don't pay the price we want, somebody else will. So it's these three sets of data, just looking at them in relationship to each other and the way they're trending, will tell you exactly what's likely to happen. So in answer to your question, Joe, about when to sell, what you do is you don't wait until prices start to fall, because that's too late. You look at the time on market and you see it starting to increase. You look at the ratio of sales to listings, you see that starting to decrease. And if the number of annual sales gets closer to that number listed for sale, you know that it's time to get out.
And do we just keep buying, continually buying and buying and buying? Like, after you see it start to trend down a little bit after, I don't know, 3 months, like what kind of leeway do we have? How much time do we have before we start to say, actually, now it's time to leave?
In one example I can give you is in Berry, which is in southern New South Wales. A great little town. And 2 years ago, September 2 years ago, the median price for a house, standard 3-bedroom house, was 1.3 million. A year later, that is just over a year ago, that had gone up to 2.3 million. So it went up by $1 million in 1 year. Now, you'd think, well, that'd be a great market to buy in. You know, that's the sort of market where price growth has been occurring very, very strongly. Like $1 million for the same house. But what was actually occurring when we looked at those indicators, we could see that the number of listings was rising steadily, and the number of sales that had occurred was falling. The median time on market was increasing. And then when it reaches what we call the tipping point, where the listings and annual sales were the same, at that point we said, you've got to get out of this market. Over the next year, prices fell by $500,000. And when you look at it now, the time on market is about 5 months. So there's a lot of people there who bought at that peak, and when they should have been, selling, not buying, who are now trying to get their money back by, with their properties on the market. So these sets of data, the listings, the annual sales, and the time on market are really powerful indicators.
Yeah, down 22%. This is Berry. Annually. So 1.7 is now down 22%. 161 days on market.
There's only been 39 slots. That's an average of about, what's that? That's about 3 a month, roughly, to sell.
Have a look. Compare the listings to sales.
Yeah, so 171 listings. And how many sales have we had in the last 12 months? 39.
So you can see how the ratio has completely gone the wrong way. And that time on market. So
time on market, 161 days.
Yeah. So if you looked at that, would you say, oh, Berry's about to turn around again and it's time to get in? No, it isn't. But you'd keep an eye on it. And when that time on market has gone back to under 60 days, when the number sold has gone up, the number of listings has fallen, and it's about even, then it might be time to move back.
So when we start to see, let's say the listings start to, because there's clearly more stock available.
You have to tick. I think you probably got surrounding. Go to. No, you got to.
Yeah, no, it's excluded. That's a real figure.
Include, you go.
Oh, okay.
81. So it's still quite a lot. So
yeah.
So the question I got on that is, like, is that statistically reliable though? Because I mean, technically, yes, it's more than 30, but I would feel a little uneasy with sort of. I mean, I'm putting $1 million or 1.5 or $2 million. Like, do you like to see a higher number of sales in an area, or you'd sort of think that there's enough confidence to be able to say, well, that's still going to hold regardless of whether it's 15 or 1,500 sales?
Well, no, in that case, I think 30 is nowhere near enough. We know when we do analysis of markets, we provide reports for various investors and developers and renovators and so on, and we have what we call a confidence indicator, and it's very much based on the number of sales and listings that are available. So that would be pretty low confidence.
Yeah. What do you sort of like to see? Do you like to see up sort of 100 or like 150, or what sort of number?
Well, it's the ratio between them that's important. But yeah, the bigger the number, the better you are. And also that, if there's more listings, then yet a market's about to go the right way. Well, then the more listings there are, the more opportunity you have to find the right property, to negotiate a good price, and so on.
I just looked at my area. There's only 8 listings, 29 days on market. Jesus.
Here's a little pocket in WA. What are your thoughts of this one?
Kelmscott. Jesus.
Kelmscott. Where's this one, Jeff? Where's Kelmscott?
WA. Armidale.
Yeah. So we've got, how many listings do we got? We got 62 listings.
Includes,
and then we go. No. Did I? No, surely not.
It'll go back. You got to tick it'll automatic. Oh, there you go. It's 62. Yeah, that's quite.
Okay.
It is 62. So that's a lot of listings.
It is.
It's grown.
But look at the number of sales. You see that listings on its own is not as important as the relationship between them. So you've got 60 to 228, which is
4 to 1, roughly.
4 to 1,
4 to 1,
yeah, which is a booming market. And you look at the time on market is 25 days. Again, it's under 30 days. And then you look at that 5-year price history. And by the way, you know, all of you can get this data by going to the, you know, PropTrack link. And
actually, someone just like jumped in here. 62 listings, Joe. How many are under contract? So I selected not under contract. It's now 27. 27 listings.
Half, yeah, which is again indicative of a really hot market. But when you're doing the analysis, you don't worry about that. Just use the basic, you know, total number of listings, because otherwise you get a bit too clever. If you start, let's exclude those under contract, and you know, then it all starts to look how many, you know, buyers are interested, whatever that means. You know, there's a lot of data, but keep it simple, because the listings and sales relationship is a very accurate one. It's been proven. There have been many studies done. I'm the first one who's actually said, well, this is, you know, how you can work out what's going to happen into the future. So that's
so you're happy with this. Kelmscott, Southeast Perth is
it's obviously
going,
a hot market. And it's going to keep going. So if you had a property in Kelmscott, you would not be selling right now, but you'd watch that time on market, and if that gets over 60 days, which is nowhere, and if the number sold starts going down and the number of listings goes up, you'd be getting a little bit toey. But you'd probably find that even when it was time to sell, that the prices are still going up, because they're reflecting what happened in the market, you know, 4 months before.
Yeah, exactly. Because it takes time for it to get on RP data. It's like the best, one of my key tips for people are like, oh, I want to understand what the market is right now. You want to understand what the market is, call up. No, maybe not this agent. Actually, how do we do not under offer? The best way to find out how
you just added in the properties that were under offer.
Yeah, exactly. Just call those clients. Call this guy and say, hey, Victor, how much did this place go for? And then he's not going to tell you directly, but, oh, do you think it's over X dollars? Because I see so many people going to the real estate sold section and trying to buy this place for 485 when actually it's sold for 550. And they get so frustrated with it. So call up the under offer. Say, hey, Andrew, how much did this place go for? 1 bed, 2 bath? Okay, maybe no, don't bother with that one. It's an antique shop. So it's that easy. All this data is easily available. The funny thing is, I actually, you can like, do you just manually type it into a spreadsheet? Like, how do you track all of this stuff?
Yeah, you just make up a spreadsheet, number of listings, total number, number of annual sales, and time on market, and then you put in a simple formula that works out the ratio. Like, what is the ratio between listings and sales? So you can see how that's changing.
How about we pick? Can we have a look at Launceston, Joe? I want to have a look at Launceston. I'm very curious to see what good old Lornie is doing.
Which suburb? There's a lot of suburbs.
I'm not as familiar. What's one of your favourite? Or
Launceston.
West Launceston. You could do.
Let's do West. Yeah.
Because Launceston itself is that's the CBD. And it's a bit not typical.
Okay. I can't. Where's the choose surrounding properties? How do I select not surrounding?
Go at the top.
Surrounding is false. Yeah, so that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. So we got West Launceston. We've got 31.
31. Yep.
And then also, so just before we dive to the next, how important is 31 as opposed to how many houses are available? Like how many houses there are in the area? So like in West Launceston, there might only be 10,000, there might be 5,000 properties. Like, does that come into like how many dwellings actually exist in there, or is that not relevant?
No. Well, it could be slightly relevant, but what you're looking at is, see, that listings figure on its own won't tell you anything. It's the same as when you go to the PropTrack data.
So we've got 31.
At the sales data. Yep. So now you go to the sales, number of sales. What is it, 60?
Yeah, so it's two to 1.
2 to 1. But if you use the sales data on its own, and there is a few people out there who have what they call price indicators, that use the sales data to try and predict what's going to happen, but it's only half the story. You need that ratio. So, right, it's actually 2 to 1. And then what was the time on market?
It's only 30 days on market, which is quite low days on market.
Yeah, that in itself indicates a market that could be poised to boom. So what you do is you just watch the listings, the sales, and if that ratio starts to go above, say, 2 to 1 to 3 to 1, and the number of time on market starts to go down, then you're pretty safe. If all of those indicators are moving the right way, you could probably buy a nice investment property in West.
Can I throw another spanner? Can I throw a spanner in the works, though, John, and just say, what if it's not affordable for the average person in the area to buy a property? Like, let's just say people are earning 80K, or let's say household income of 120K, and go back to West Launceston, for example, Joe, and see the median house price is 615K. So how does that play into? Does that have any impact at all, or can people keep affording to keep paying more, even if the ratio is?
It depends on a number of things. The first one is when you're looking at a city like Launceston, which has got about 30 suburbs. If West Launceston starts to go up in price dramatically, then the demand ripples out to the other areas. So what you then get is prices start to go up in the surrounding areas that haven't already gone up. And then, of course, you're quite right. If the affordability kicks in and nobody wants to pay that money, then the price growth just simply stops. So the demand falls away.
Well, this is a platform called Microburbs, and I'm sure you've heard of.
Probably goes to the raw data. He doesn't worry about going.
Metcalf. Yeah, you go to the good stuff. But this earnings over $2,000 per week. There's only 5% of people in West Launceston that earn that amount of money. So does that kind of is there that limit to how far property prices can grow? And also, what about the availability of credit? Like how people can get access to that credit? Because if the banks say no more lending for not anyone, but how do we keep pushing through the ceiling?
Well, the banks have their own way of assessing risk, and it's a very, very peculiar way, but it's based a lot on defaults and things like that. So they don't really look at if you can afford to buy a property, they'll lend you the money. But the question was about that, the income levels, and the answer there is it really depends on what percentage of people are buying properties as investors. In other words, they're not living in there. So when you look at something like that, analysis of income in an area, you've got to remember if half of the people living there are renters, it's completely irrelevant because it's
and as well, like some people may have owned there for 20 years, so their income is not as relevant there because they've got I don't know, they've owned the house outright, or they've got 50K or 20K on there, and they can go and they're going to sell their property for 600, and they can go and buy for 700 or 750. So
or they might have a veggie garden and chooks in the backyard. So
I suppose I just like to I like to cover all my bases and sort of say, understand what are the sort of. I mean, maybe it is actually just that simple. I'm overthinking it. I'm analysis by paralysis, but I just like to make sure that
is that a piece? Is the affordability a big piece for the areas for you?
Well, it is for first-time buyer markets. If interest rates go up, it's not for areas where most property owners are investors, because you can claim the cost of interest, as a holding cost, but also you can raise the rent if every now and again in accordance with demand. And there's for upgraders, it's not really a consideration. For downsizers, it is of no consideration whatsoever. So, what's this? Can we run Logan?
Well, okay. Which suburb? Like Logan's a huge area. We'll do
so I saw that comment and I brought up Crestmead, which is a suburb in Logan, and this is the first property that came up.
Oh, that's
wow. What happened there?
I think we had some incidences of upset people by the looks of things. So probably not the best representation of Logan, but there are 26 listings in this suburb of Crestmead. So we go exactly this. Yeah, it's the pocket you don't want to be buying in. There we go. Here, put our little ratio. And how often, like, so 166 and 25 days on market.
Wow, that's a booming market.
Like 7 to 1, basically.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that number?
166.
26. Wow. Okay, 6.4%, and then 25 days on market.
6.4.
Yeah. So they're the sorts of markets you'd say, no, there's no point. You know, you want to get in before that sort of relationship occurs. Very much so.
Do you see this changing? So this ratio, like how quickly does it go bop, bop, and like what kind of time have we got between this and between a whatever this was, a 1.9 where it's like, oh, maybe, and then a 5.4 or a 6 point whatever.
Well, how quickly it changes is when markets are going backwards, that is the prices are starting to fall, it occurs very slowly because people put their properties on the market hoping to get a certain price and they can't get it. And so they keep the property on the market. They might change agents or whatever. So the first indicator is that time on market starts to blow out. And then you see that, hang on, the time on market's getting longer and longer. That means more people are trying to sell and they're not getting what they want. So it can take, a year or longer for that sort of downturn to occur. But the other way around, it actually...
Jenny.
Sorry?
Go on.
Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm looking at the comments.
Okay. The other way around, when markets are heating up, it changes very, very quickly. So in a really hot market, you might find there's only 1 or 2 listings. Properties are getting sold. The buyers' agents are in there getting the pre-listed, so pre-market opportunities. And so there's very few listings. I think during the last Sydney boom, I could see properties where there were 1 or 2 listings and 40 more sales, the extraordinary ratios. So that changes very, very quickly. And then it starts, so it can take, 3 or 4 months for a boom to occur or to start and really, really kick in. But when it goes the other way, it takes maybe a year or longer for the prices to decline. And we actually saw that in up to a year. It depends, again, on what percentage of the people living in that suburb are renters or they're investor-owned properties, because we mentioned Moranbah, where 80% of the properties were owned by investors, after the $1,000 a week you can get for rent. And what I noticed there was back in 2012, the first thing that happened was that the rental vacancy rate started to blow out, and it got up to from 3% to 5% to 10%.
Investors got out.
Yeah, I was saying get out now because, and some people said, oh, but the rents are still going up, prices are still going up. And I said, yeah, but they're lagging indicators. They're telling you, about the past. And of course, that was a few months later, the prices started to come down dramatically.
Just to clarify for Facebook user, which is Aniket, the percentage, the higher percentage or the higher ratio is generally better. As in,
let's just do it again for Katara. So you got Katara. We're looking at the ratio of listings, sales, and days on market. So we've got Katara here, which has 10. So you go here, you go 10 listings.
It's hardly
10
any.
listings, bloody nothing. But yeah, again, it's proportional, right? And then we've grown 2.5%. We've got 53 sales. And then what's that ratio?
That's about 6 to 1. Is it 53?
Yeah, 53. Yeah.
Yeah, so about 5%, 5 to 1.
It doesn't have to be that good to do that one, Joe. It's
yeah. And then 38 days on market. So how often are we doing this weekly? So week 1, week 2, are we doing it monthly? Are we doing it quarterly? Like how often do we look at this data?
You're doing it when you're looking at areas where you think you might want to buy. You do it once a month. You can track you pick up a trend within about 3 months. If all of those indicators are moving the right way, then you know on a winner. But if you've got a property and you sort of think, well, should I be selling it or not? You do exactly the same thing and watch for the reverse occurring. So as long as it doesn't occur, it means you don't have to sell, if things are going to be going quite well. So in that case, if the indicators are good, you might only do it once every 3 months. But you'd probably be wise. Yeah.
Yeah, you just keep doing it. And the thing is, you can create, I literally created a scraper. I created a scraper from ChatGPT to do exactly what you're talking about here, where you can take the number, put it in the thing, and then it prints out a spreadsheet. So these data, you don't need to manually sit there and do it all yourself, or you can go onto Upwork and get someone to do it for you. But I'm sure it's against some terms, so I might bleep this bit out for the the YouTube, so I don't get in trouble. Now that I think about it, but one of the things you just said is Crestmead's ratio might be going a bit too hot. 31 and 166 sales days on market 30. So you said what? Get out of this market? So what?
No, you wouldn't get out. You just
it's hard to get in, Joe. It's very hard to get in.
Yeah,
because people are just there's almost no listing, so people they're just going to have to pay too much.
Yeah, so that doesn't mean don't get in. It means get in if you can.
Get in if you can. Wrong with it, and as long as those ratios stay like that, and even when it starts to go the other way in Crestmead, it's got to drop to about 2 to 1, where there's twice as many sales compared to listings before you'd really think now it's time to get out of here, and you'll probably find the right time to make the move. So yeah, I wouldn't. It's just hard to get in. That's the only problem there.
Yeah. It's crazy that we're just looking at 3 numbers. We're just looking at listings.
You look at this. So Brian's brought up an example. The ratio is nearly 1 to 1, and we're talking multi-million-dollar suburb here, and not a lot of. The thing that I wouldn't feel as confident. Anything below sort of 60 sales a year, I'd start to feel a little, as you sort of said, John. I think it's lower confidence. I would sort of start to be, But
we got 20.
I think you could look at that and say, well, that's interesting.
Down 30%.
Yeah. What you'd want to be able to do, you can look, if you look along that graph, it shows you the sales history. So look at the peak and you'll see how many sales there were at that time.
Yeah, a lot of sales, like double the amount of sales what there is now.
Double the number, and probably the listings was half. So, but you can see that was a warning at that point there to get out of that market, because it was
you can see it started to drop. It went to 50, 54, and if you look as exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
Is there a way you can look at historical listings? Like, you probably can't do that.
No. You have to do this yourself. But you can get all the other data here. You can't get historical time on market either. But when we look at, we've got our own database, that patented database. We look at these indicators. We also look at asking price compared to sale price. A lot of other indicators, but these are the main 3 we use, and they're very reliable. It needs a traffic light at the end to say go or no go. Well, I'm sure it won't be long before somebody like PropTrack realizes that they can use this data in this way and does exactly that. The only problem with that
probably shouldn't send this live then.
Well, the problem is that, you see, they're owned by realestate.com.au. Realestate.com.au wouldn't want an indicator saying don't buy in this suburb, because all the estate agents pay money, so they probably won't do it. If they were clever, they wouldn't do that, or they'd make everyone a green light, so that everyone thinks that they're the right suburbs to buy in.
Best person to speak to about getting a haircut is a barber, right? I mean, haven't got any hair, need a haircut.
Yes.
Should probably do our second. I'll get a second sponsorship show.
Got to do another sponsor, and then we'll come back.
Heaps more slides to go through.
No, I don't think there's many slides to go through, but there's a couple of interesting. Like, I want to know about the market predictions about where things are going, and a couple more things that you've got hidden away for us. So let's do it.
It's been amazing, John.
The amazing thing with Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special announcement from the Master of Commercial Property Investing, Steve Polisi.
I love commercial property.
Get ready to have your minds blown as Steve is back and he's got some pretty exciting news for us. Steve is unleashing his second sensational book upon the world. And get this, for the Oz Property Investors members out there, he's giving it away absolutely free. Yep, 100% free. Yep. 100% free for all property enthusiasts who want to learn and grow on their commercial property investing journey. But he's also added a little extra chili to make this deal even spicier. With this free book, you'll also receive a complimentary 1-hour strategy session with the man himself. Imagine a full 60 minutes with Steve's commercial and property genius dedicated to helping you master the intricate dance of commercial property investing. And who better to dance with the man who looks better than Patrick Swayze in Dirty Dancing? I don't know about that. Want to grab this offer? It's super easy. If you're live right now, click the link in the comments and secure it today. If not, grab your device, open up the browser, head over to polisiproperty.com, look for the book page and grab your free copy of Steve's latest masterpiece. And when you're checking out, make sure to use the exclusive code OZPROP to secure the free book and also your free 1-hour strategy session. My only concern with this offer is that Steve's going to have to turn it off soon, as he can only do so many sessions. So if you want to secure your spot, do so today. Oh, nearly passed out there.
Something a little bit different for your... Hey, actually, how does this all work for commercial property? Like from a supply demand, is it the same kind of metrics and things that we need to be looking at when it comes to commercial property?
Well, I studied the residential property market, for around 20 years before I could work out exactly how to predict the future with a reasonable degree of accuracy. And then I thought, I haven't got another 15 years left to do the same with commercial. But I've spoken with a lot of commercial buyers agents, and I know a lot of them quite well. And it's a completely different process. It's more about, looking at the cash to cash and the type of property and the type of tenants and lease and so on. So,
with the data's not there either.
No, it's nothing like it. And I have been asked that quite often. Can you do a report on the potential for, say, early childhood learning centre or something like that in an area? And no, it's not my bag. I don't do that. But there are plenty of experts out there who can do it. It's more on the ground type research, and it's a lot harder, I think, than what we do.
On that point about Joe loves some good. He loves the old moniker of boots on the ground for going visiting locations, and I've sort of semi-converted myself as well. Bought a couple sight unseen and some in person. But I want to know, what are your thoughts on the data, so desktop sort of research, like a lot of stuff we're doing now, versus actually visiting a location? Do you think there's much in visiting, or
well, you can do a lot of that virtually now with sort of Google Earth and Street View and so on. So you can actually see what properties really look like, because when you look at the realestate.com.au version, they've airbrushed out the pit bull terriers and things like that, the next door neighbors.
And the tape across the floor which you can't see in the photos. You're like, oh, okay.
That's right.
Didn't know that was there.
It is. I mean, we've had examples with there was one good one was a suburb in Tasmania, in Hobart, on the eastern shore, called Clarendon Vale. Sorry?
That's the rougher part, isn't it? The east of Tasmania.
Pretty rough. Eastern shore, yeah. And it had a population of about 500, and you had a fire station, a police station, and an adult education centre. And I thought it was all the data was pointing for it to boom, So we went to this rather isolated suburb, and the first thing I noticed was all the skid marks on the road as you drove in, and then there was the adult education centre, and it was completely burnt to the ground. And then I realised why they had the police station and the fire station needed to be there to control the locals. It was a terrible place, and you just wouldn't ever buy a property there as an investment. But on the other hand, just a bit further north, this is a suburb that had the highest rental yield in the whole of Tasmania, an actual genuine rental yield. And I thought, wow, this is good. Why would it have the highest rental yield in all of Tasmania? So we went and had a look, And the first thing we saw was this huge prison. And it was, there were searchlights and razor wire around the top. And it was the Tasmanian maximum security male prison. This is where they kept all the bad guys, the really bad ones, all locked away.
That's where Martin Bryan sat.
Yeah, he's in there. And, all these really bad hombres. But the rental demand was huge. So we went and had a look around. And, of course, it was all the wives and girlfriends of the guys that were locked away who were renting properties in Risdon Vale so they could be there for conjugal visits on the weekend. And they'd even in the prison, they built this sort of little playground for kiddies so the kiddies could play at this playground while mum and dad were having a bit of nookie. So that's the reason why this area had such high rent demand. It was because of the prison that was causing it. So on the ground research is really important.
There you go.
Yeah.
And how do you factor in like housing commission and percentage of renters and owner occupiers? Because all of that data is available on very like ABS and all of that stuff. Like, have you run data on? Okay, well, there's 10% housing commission here. That means X amount of dollars in pricing. Have you done any of that kind of stuff?
Not so much whether it's housing commission. It's a lot of that is to do with people who are looking at investment properties from a renovation perspective. And a lot of those housing commission areas have got properties that are really suitable for renovation. The areas are being refurbished and have got a much more prestigious look about them. So it's the same with areas that have got lots of holiday homes, along the coast. And these old holiday homes are, worth a fortune because they can be knocked down and a proper house put up. So stats is the ABS source that gives you that information as to the percentage of housing commission. But I always look more at the median age, the types of families, the types of properties that are, most in demand in those areas to work out more about the actual, area itself.
So what do you mean? What's important and what's not important? What should we be looking? What is the ideal demographic that you want to be seeing in the 2020, was it 2021 ABS or was it 2022?
21
census. 21 census.
Yeah, what you're looking for is if you're after cash flow or after good rent demand, then you look at the types of renters in the area, and by that I don't mean whether they're going to pay the rent or not, but is it the type of demand it's caused because there's construction work going on in the area, or it's a tourist and holiday area, and therefore the rent might be seasonal. What you're looking for is areas where there's good permanent rent demand because the types of renters are there all the time. And when you look at buying a property, again, it's the same thing. Look at the types of households that are moving into an area or that are in an area, and that'll tell you the type of property that's most in demand. So say the median age is 60. Good example for that would be, say, Bateman's Bay or Sussex Inlet in New South Wales, or the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria, Bribie Island in Queensland, those sorts of locations, very high median age. And when you look at the tenure, you see that most of the people own their own homes without any debt because they've downsized. So if you were buying a house in one of those areas as an investment, it's more about it's got to be located a few kilometres from the town centre because older people like to walk, but they don't like to walk too far. Single level, easy to maintain, easy to access, easy to secure. And that sort of property you'll be able to on-sell in a few years' time much more easily and for a much bigger profit than something which is on the side of a hill and is 2 stories, has no appeal for older people whatsoever. So, so the demographics tell you that, all of that information.
And one of the things I read in the book, Mastering the Australian Housing Market, was that you were constantly talking about buying and selling and buying and selling and like jumping in and out of the market. Is that a strategy? Not financial advice to anyone, but is that how you've kind of gone from things? Because I see people that are so successful with just building portfolios and holding them for the long term. Do you do a lot of flipping? Is that a thing that people should be doing more? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
At certain times of the market, if you're, let's look at Perth, where there was 8 years of no growth at all, obviously that, it wouldn't matter what you did, it wasn't going to work. So the first thing is to make sure you're buying in the right location, the areas that got really good growth potential, and we've sort of shown you how you can find those. But I believe you'll do far better if you can buy in an area that's got a huge growth potential in a short period of time, and then sell at the end and do that again. You'll be much better off. And the examples of that, which I've revealed in the past, one was Hay in southern New South Wales. It's a small town in the Riverina, and they were moving to cotton farming. And so Oscott, which is the cooperative, had to build a cotton gin in Hay. That required 160 workers. I found out about that just by watching the ABC News one night, and they made this announcement. And I thought, let's go and have a look and see how many properties are available for rent in Hay, knowing that 160 families were about to move in to build this cotton gin. There were 2 rental vacancies. So I thought, that means that rents are probably going to go up. How many are for sale? 3. I thought, that means that prices are going to go up dramatically too. And so I actually did it on Facebook. I told everyone and said, Hay's going to boom. Prices doubled in less than 7 months, and the rental yield was still at 10%. So people who bought properties, and quite a few of them sent me a little note saying, thank you so much. The value of my property doubled, and it's been positive years, positive cash flow all the way. So if you pick those sorts of areas, then you can do very, very well indeed. And I've got lots of examples of people that have done that. You won't, I don't think you'll find another area that's going to double in value in 7 months. But, if you can get 30, 40% growth in a year, or even doubling in 3 years, that's much better than getting this, 7% average growth and hoping that continues for a long period of time.
Yeah. It takes a little bit more time, energy, and effort. But if you can pin it down, get in, get out, get in, get out. Yeah. So with so what's going to stop this? What like, how do we stop house prices? It sounds like we're on a train that's headed straight up to Expensiveville, but how the heck does this stop?
Well, I mentioned before when, in 2009, when I think it was, when the Sydney house price hit 500,000, and the journo said, John, that's it. Surely that's the ceiling. It's hit. It can't go anymore. And now it's 1 million. So there is no ceiling. It will keep on going. And the reason for that is that 1/3 of buyers are investors. So if rent demand goes up and rents go up and yields go up, more investors will buy properties. So prices are relevant. It's the return you're getting on the investment, and 1/3 own their properties without any debt at all. So again, there's no limit to that ceiling. It's only about 10% of people who've got a first home that they bought in the last few years where there is definitely a ceiling. And for people wanting to buy their first home at the moment, it's a bit difficult. But they're the only groups of the market that really have a ceiling on them. The rest of the market doesn't.
Wait, so you're saying that renters, that investors drive capital growth? A lot of people say capital growth is driven purely by owner-occupiers. They determine the price point. Are you saying that renters?
No, John's not saying that at all. He's saying that,
no,
regardless of whoever the buyer is, and most likely,
Yeah, it's irrelevant whether the buyer is an investor or who they are. It doesn't matter. It's the demand that they create. That's what drives the market.
Yeah, and an interesting thing. Oh, sorry, you.
I'd say the only thing about investors, of course, is they don't live in the properties that they purchase. So there is an increased level of volatility. They're more likely to get out when things go bad and to buy when things go good, which is
exactly like what you're saying.
To the booms, and the downturns can be more dramatic in areas where more investors own properties.
So we're all investors here. We're all property investors. Where are we buying now? Where are the next areas that we should be starting to get our, dip our little toes into to get excited about? Like, where
Got to
are
look
we
at the
actually...
ratio, Joe. Look at the ratio, man. That's the answer to the question.
Yeah, but I haven't got all the. I haven't got. I haven't got all day. I've got. I've only got so many hours.
Yeah, you can't do 50,000 suburbs, but luckily we do that for you. So if you want to buy reports from us, then that will narrow down search dramatically. But just generally, we look at the main dynamics, and I think that the two main dynamics which are occurring in the property market right now, the first one is the reopening of the borders and pouring in of people from overseas. Just 600,000 last year, 500,000 this year. That's going to continue. Most of these people, they're renters, and they most live in the inner urban areas of our capital cities. So we're going to see rents rise dramatically as, the older, well-established inner urban suburbs of Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and also Perth. So for investors looking for cash flow, these are really going to be good cash cows because they'll be delivering very, very good returns. And of course, as the rents rise and the yields rise, more investors will want to buy in those areas, and that'll cause price growth. So I think that's one, it's a given that's going to happen. We mentioned at the start, I said it's all about rents are going to rise dramatically, and these are the areas where they'll be rising most. The other dynamic is the downsizing baby boomers, and we saw happening before the pandemic. A lot of people started moving away, selling their family homes. They're encouraged to do so because the federal government said you can put up to $600,000 of your sale price into super tax-free. So a lot of people are taking that opportunity to sort of give themselves a financial security in the future. And having to downsize, well, they look to areas that are popular with older people, coastal areas not too far away from capital city and so on. So that's the other thing that I can see happening, with huge increase in demand in the most desirable coastal locations. So you're looking in Victoria, Phillip Island, East Gippsland, the Mornington Peninsula, in New South Wales, the south coast of New South Wales, Queensland, Bribie Island, and maybe the Gold Coast, certainly the Fraser Coast, which is still quite affordable. These areas have potential to double in price in the next few years. So I think that's something we won't see again for a long, long time.
Oh, interesting. There you go. Some locations.
You just say things like massive things. These places are going to double, but you just say it like, it is what it is.
It's not saying.
I could say potential, but I'm not. I'm saying they could do that. And we've seen that in the past. You look at places like Byron Bay, massive growth, over a few years, and so that if the demand is there, that will occur. And because people are downsizing, they're selling a home in Sydney for $2.5 million, and they're putting 600 into super, maybe another 400,000. They can buy a property in Sussex in Little Batemans Bay for 1.5 million. At the moment, you can buy properties there for half that. So these, you've got a sort of a growth potential, but there's a limit to it. And when we've reached that limit, it'll probably be when that means prices in those areas will stop. But that really hasn't started yet.
So the ratio at Byron Bay, I'm just looking it up. I can't help myself. It's looking pretty ugly right now. Like it's down to not a lot of sales, but when it was absolutely like mid 2022, it was like close to double what the sales were now. Actually, even So
and I think it's had massive price falls as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's gone. It peaked at about 3.225. It's dropped $1 million a median at least in about 2 years. So that's what.
And had you tracked the sales and listings and time on market, you would have got out at exactly the right time.
I can sort of you could sort of see it started to turn about that sort of 84, and it dipped a bit, and then even when it went back up, like false sort of the sales are still dropping. So people might have if people looked at that, they might have thought, oh, well, it's come back up, and then the sales just continue to decline. So
and now the numbers don't lie.
One of the questions I have for you, John, is why is the rental yield so challenging in Victoria? Like not Victoria as a whole, but like you look at pockets and it's like 3-4% for a $500,000-$600,000 property. Like why does that exist when there's still a rental crisis down there?
Investors are too nice. Well, they can't. Oh, here you go, John. Sorry.
That's a good answer. Yeah, they're nicer in Victoria. It's just a fact of history, that for a long time there hasn't been a housing shortage in Victoria, so there hasn't been that demand on prices or on rents. But you'll see that change quite dramatically. I think you can, if you look at places, the CBD, Melbourne, Docklands, South Bank, that the yields are starting to go up quite strongly. I think rents in Melbourne CBD units went up $100 a week in the last year. So the median asking rent went from $400 to $500. I'm only going on memory here. So it is starting to change, but it'll change more in those sorts of places where rents are really going to escalate.
Where, sorry? Just cut out.
Dallas. In Melbourne.
So it's in the east. And I'm trying
to western suburbs. Dallas. Yeah, Dallas.
Oh, west. Okay.
Yeah, in the western area. And it's interesting too. You said, well, how can we know where people are moving to? See, and the funny thing about those sorts of areas is that there's a lot of people who came here from places like Lebanon and Turkey, and they're Sunni Muslims, and so there's a big Sunni mosque there. There are Sunni schools, and so people coming from those countries want to move to those areas because they feel more at home. They've got the religious community, and also they can send their kids to a Sunni Muslim school. So there's a big attraction. If people are coming from those sorts of areas, then we know that they're the sorts of areas they're going to go to in Australia.
And it's similar in the north of Adelaide. I mean, I'm not. I'm just anecdotally sort of saying this. I'm not. I haven't sort of looked at probably as much as what you have, but in places like Paralawi and there's a big sort of couple of Sikh temples around there, and that's sort of a lot of people want to be close to that sort of. And I mean, Adelaide's been ridiculous anyway, like price wise, but there's a lot of talk, and I suppose there's only so many houses in that area, and people want to be close to their community and their sort of so that's sort of another potential thing.
It is, and so people go to where they feel comfortable, and also they have difficulties sometimes with English, and they haven't got licenses, and so it takes a while for them to establish, and they just want to be amongst communities of like-minded people. So that's
like everybody,
so that's what happens. And even when the rents go up dramatically, they'll still want to stay there. So it's good for investors, and it's be good for them because that's where they want to live.
Numbers are looking similar in that. I mean, when I say numbers, the listings versus the start. I mean, everywhere, a lot of places boomed in 2019, so sort of 2022. But they sort of went from sales doubled in about 2 years, number of sales, and of course, it's all relative. A market that I haven't really, and Joe, I don't know, maybe might leave this off here, and we might have a quick sort of discussion on this, but I haven't looked much into it. What are your thoughts on Darwin? Do you know much about Darwin? And of course, Darwin is a huge capital city, not huge. Like obviously, there's markets within markets.
A very small city, but
well, yeah, but I mean, it's not like
town.
It's probably 100 suburbs in Darwin, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a good amount of suburbs. What happens up there? Because what drives that market?
It's probably one of the few markets that's in decline right now in Australia. But a lot of people don't realise that they think it's a mining town or whatever. It's nothing like that. There's no mining really that goes on except gas and oil. But the reason for Darwin's housing booms and busts is because it's one of the main areas where when we get involved in foreign engagements, whether it be peacekeeping missions or whatever, and we've been in Iraq and Afghanistan and various places like that, that all of the troops that are engaged in those conflicts were serviced from Darwin. So it was main, and it takes about 10 people on the ground in Darwin to support one troop, one person in Afghanistan or Iraq. So there was a tremendous demand for, especially for rental housing by defence personnel and their families during those conflicts, and so the Darwin market boomed. In fact, in 2009, for a brief period of time, it had the highest median house price of any city in Australia. It was only for 1 month, it sort of peaked, and it was Darwin. And then it all went backwards. So if we're not involved in sort of peacekeeping, border control type missions, then Darwin just stagnates because there's no, people coming in. In fact, it's got a negative population growth. It's the only capital city in Australia right now where the population is actually falling. So that's the reason. Okay. And if we get involved in a big conflict with some northern country, then it's likely that troops are needed in, say, Indonesia or somewhere like that. Of course, the Darwin's property market will flourish.
Go a bit crazy. So a question that's popped up here, and I'm just very cautious of your time as well. So I want to jump to a couple of questions. Do you see the population forecast for a state or area as a leading indicator?
Not the forecast. I think the actual population movement is a leading indicator. When we looked at like the number of people coming in from overseas, that's a leading indicator to price growth in outer suburban areas in 4 or 5 years' time. So it's not that simple. Population is a very, very strong dynamic, but there's a lot more to it than just the number of people.
Because of course there could be a lot of building going on as well if there's a lot of potential land.
That's right. And again, it's about supply and demand, that ratio, and the trend that.
So what actually the question I have is when's it gonna shift? Are we gonna be 3, 4 years, 5 years? Like, is this gonna be going gangbusters for the next 3, 2?
Maybe not Darwin, Joe. Unless
not Darwin.
But it's a lovely place.
Yeah. I don't think it's good to generalise, but I think in terms of certain markets, like we mentioned, the regional markets where downsizes are moving to, that trend will probably exhaust itself within about 5 or 6 years because downsizers are getting older and they'll stop doing that. And we don't know what the next generation of retirees, whether they'll want to do the same thing or not. They may not. But in terms of the what was the first part of about how long is it going to last? Yeah. So in terms of the overseas arrivals, again, it's, as long as our borders remain open and we get hundreds of thousands of people pouring in, then we're going to get continued rent demand and high yields, and we're going to get more growth in the outer suburban areas so looking at Melbourne, Melton, Pakenham, Cranbourne. In Sydney, it'll be Campbelltown, those sorts of outer areas where the price growth will occur as first-time buyers start to buy their homes. So that could go on, for another 5 years as well. But then those people will want to upgrade, and so they'll want to be coming, to live closer into, and so we'll see the growth sort of moving up, and then we'll get a baby boom or whatever it is, after that. But that's a long way away. I think if we look 5 years ahead, we'll probably be in the middle of another, first-home buyer boom.
Yeah. Let's jump to the pre. There's a couple more quick questions. Let's. So Jenny said, question for later. I see how some chosen data is being overlaid, but I think we did answer that. But what do you see our top 5 market influences right now? Gee, that's a lot of influences. Okay, that's a huge question. I think we might have to.
What do you see our top 5 market influences right now?
Top 5. Well, I think for imminent growth, potential, looking at the imminent growth, it's very definitely those 3 we mentioned: sales, listings, and time on market in combination. When you're looking further ahead, it's about the need for, the cost of, and the ability to finance. So that's, takes out a couple of years. Where do people need to have finance? How much does it cost? Like, is interest rates going up or down? and the affordability. You know, people, can they get finance? And then the third one is that one about population movement. So that can go out 5 years into the future, as to what type of people are, you know, who's arriving into the country, who's moving where, and what type of housing will they need. So they're the five, you know, the five main ones.
From the sounds of it, though, you actually look at where, once people have actually moved there, rather than relying on like a forecast that might not happen. Whereas you're waiting for people who actually have get there and then sort of like set up their sort of rental property or whatever. Is that what you're sort of, is that your line of thinking?
Pretty much, except unless we are pretty certain that certain things are going to happen, like with the downsizes. I mean, that's pretty obviously going to happen. 1/3 of our population is age 55 and over. They've got incentives to move, to downsize. So that's not difficult to, you know. The hard thing is work out, well, where are they going to go? What type of property do they want to buy when they go there? And again, that's not too difficult to answer either.
Yeah, I think this will make this the last one. Let's do it. What are your thoughts on, I don't know if you've studied this, but if you haven't, it's okay. But are the periods of no low growth getting shorter, like in terms of capital growth? Like, have you seen that sort of, or does it depend on the area? Probably.
It depends on those five main influences we talked about. I don't think there's such thing as a cycle as such. I think there are patterns that repeat, but you did see, you know, in the earlier slide that I had, where we've had 5 property market booms since 1901, and we're heading for another one. So, you know, that's only 6 booms in 120 years. It's not a lot, really. So I don't think cycles are getting any shorter.
Not really getting shorter, because the last big, 15%. I think that was what, 2001, wasn't it? Was it?
That's right. Yeah, 2001, 2002, where prices went up dramatically. Yeah. So 20 years since the last big boom.
I think we'll leave it at that.
So just quickly, can we do, just to round out the rental side of things, do we do the same data for rent? So you can see here we've got rent, we've got 28 leased, and we can go back and look at, you know, the lease side of things. Do we just track the exact same thing? It's a similar process? Because they've got the days on market. It's
completely different. We don't use any of that data to work out. Sorry. Okay. What we do is we look at the rental vacancy rate, and that is, so you go into quick stats and you see how many properties are owned by investors, and then you look up in realestate.com.au how many of those are vacant. So if you go into realestate.com.au and look up a suburb, you know, and you look up rent instead of buy, and then see how many there are, all properties. And then, so what have we got?
38.
Yep. And then you compare that to the total number of investor-owned properties in that same suburb, which you do by going to quick stats, and it'll give you the number of investor-owned properties. You've got to go right down the bottom.
Down the bottom, Joe.
Yeah, under tenure.
Unoccupied.
No, keep going. Tenure. Rented. You've gone too far now.
Yeah, you got to go up, Joe. Yeah, 10-year type. There you go. 10-year, yep.
Yeah. See, how many rented properties are there?
1,900.
1,900. Yep. Okay, so then you know how many are actually vacant, which was 30 something, I think.
38.
Yeah, 38. Yeah.
Yep.
Gee, that's a critically low.
Yeah, so you work out the percentage, what 38 is of that number, and it's probably around 1% or something. Is it less than 1%?
It's not as low as what I thought. 2%.
2%.
No, I think no, I don't think that's a percentage. Yeah.
So that's the first thing I do. Now, if that number, the rental vacant, and that's the actual real way to calculate rental vacancy rates, because there's a lot of different ways people do it, like how long it is between rentals that a property is vacant and so on. This is, the actual percentage of investor-owned properties that are vacant. That's the vacancy rate.
Some people do it if it's vacant for 3 weeks or something, isn't it? It has to be vacant for a certain.
No, this is just advertised rental vacancies.
Yep.
You want to know what percentage of the investor-owned properties are actually vacant. Now, if the critical thing is, this is what I learned over years of study, if that's less than 3% or less, that means that all rents in that suburb will be going up. If it's between 3 and 5%, then that means some rents will be going up and some won't. If it's between 5 and 7%, it means that some rents will be going down. And if it's over 10%, it means that all rents will be going down. So the rental vacancy rate in Moranbah, when we talked about that end of the boom, it had just over 10%. And that, to me, that indicated, right, it's time to get out of that market before the crash occurs. So it's that rental vacancy rate. And then that's all the only figure you need, because if that's, around 2%, which pretty much all of Australia is right now, or less, that means all rents are going up. It's that simple. You don't need to worry about anything else. And I'd be very hard pressed to find any suburbs in the whole of Australia where the rental vacancy rate is 10% or more. So we're pretty much heading for
2%. Yeah.
Yeah, the national, I think, is 0.9%, isn't it, roughly? I think that's the other.
It's just so low. And it tells you that rents are going to go up.
Yeah, there we go. That was a masterclass. Like I was captivated when we were doing those numbers. So, Joe, let's give John an opportunity to. You're thinking about things, Joe. Do you want to ask another question, or you probably should?
No, that's just my face.
Look,
I want to learn, John. How can we learn more from you, mate? Because I think you've given us a bit of a bloody teaser here of what the goods are. You've provided a lot of value for us. So what can we do to learn more?
I think the important thing here is that everybody's situation is different. Some people are seasoned investors, some are first-time investors, some are thinking about it. But all of you, I'm sure, have got some burning question you'd like answered about property investing. And so what I've offered here is a free personal 30-minute telephone consultation with me. I'm not selling anything. There's no obligation. And you can book yours as a result of watching this lovely chat show we've been on. So the way you do that is you go to my website, lindemanreports.com.au, and you'll see an actual... we're doing that now. We're going to book a free spot, are we, Joe?
I'm booking my first one.
Okay. It's that
Joe's
easy.
He's front running, are you, Joe?
Oh, you've even got we're not available. I've already booked out all the slots. But perfect. You just go into the
You don't book everything out, please. But you're quite welcome to book one. But that's the offer. So if you've got a burning question, I'm sure you have, you can have 30 minutes of my time by phone, free of charge. And of course, you can see there that there's not a lot of spots. I make as much time available as I can. But two things happen when I do that. One is I don't make any, and the other is I lose my voice. So, I have to limit it in some way. But if you want to take advantage of that, I'd love you to, and look forward to talking with you all again in that free consultation.
Thanks for John. I really appreciate just the value you've added over this last close to 2 hours now, and just the last sort of 10. I mean, I think you've been doing it a little bit longer, but no, thanks for. I've listened to many a podcast of you on it, and just been to a couple of sessions of you live. So I really appreciate what you've done for the Australian property community, not just our group tonight.
It's been a pleasure, and I wish you all very successful investing.
Yeah,
well, absolutely. I think it's been unreal, mate. Everyone should go out and read this book because it has the foundational data. I've got the other one as well. I can't pitch this one just yet. I haven't started it. So, but this gives you what you're talking about there is just written down in number form, in a way that makes perfect sense to line these things up. So that's what I really enjoyed about that. Everyone is loving this one. So thank you very much, John. Let's go out there, guys, and let's go buy a property. Have a good one. See you later.